Where we just don't want kids to miss it. That we truly believe that if they're back in Sunday school, while we love what we do back there, that there is something special about them also being in worship with you. Hey, good morning, boys and girls. I need to know if any of you have a favorite food. Hank, what's your favorite food? Pizza. My big friends out here, does anybody love pizza? Let's see if any of our friends out here love pizza. Favorite food, pizza? All right, let's see. Who else? What's your favorite food? Macaroni and cheese. I even brought it. We're going to talk about this in a minute. Macaroni and cheese, friends? Anybody out there? Not very many of you.
Oh, I love that.
All right, Grayson, what's yours?
Garlic rolls.
Garlic rolls. Anybody like a good garlic knot? Good garlic roll? All right. What's yours? Favorite food? What's yours?
Pizza.
Pizza. We got some pizza friends. So let's mac and cheese. Any new favorite foods?
Sushi.
Ooh, sushi. Any of my adult friends like sushi?
It's good. It's good.
If it's cooked. All right, let's do one more.
I like scrambled eggs.
Scrambled eggs.
Yeah.
Every morning, that's what I eat for breakfast, except this morning. I didn't have time. All right, so I brought something to share with you about my favorite food. What do you think my favorite food is? Mac and cheese. Now, my mom, if she was here, she'd probably be sad that I showed you this, because my real favorite is my mom's mac and cheese. Now, it is like so good. Like, it's so delicious. She does it the right way. She doesn't bake it. My baked macaroni friends, we'll have to talk later. I'm not a fan. She does it the right way on the stove. It's creamy. It's so good. But do you know why it's really my favorite? Because my mom makes it every time we have a special family gathering. And so what really makes it special is the presence, the people who are there with me when I eat it. That's what makes it so very special. And you know what? Today, we're going to share in a special meal together called Holy Communion. Can you say Holy Communion?
Holy Communion.
That's a special Jesus meal. And you know what makes it special? The people who take it with us and the person. Jesus did, that's right. And he said that whenever we got together as friends of Jesus, that we should remember that meal and we should have the same meal that he had. And so that's why you're in here today, is that you're going to share in a special meal. And what makes it special is the person who started it all and the people at your table who love you, who are taking it with you. That's what makes it a special meal. Can you guys pray with me? Dear God, thank you for loving me and making me so special. Thank you for your special meal. Amen.
Amen. Is it okay if I do it? Thank you, Suzanne. And we can talk about that baked macaroni and cheese thing, okay? We'll discuss that in a little bit. If we had an interactive experience, I'd invite our voters at home to send that in right now. See what you think about that. We continue in the testimony of God's goodness as part of our celebration of stewardship. One of the things we want to remember is that stewardship, most people equate stewardship. I'm getting a little bit too much back here behind me. Can you bring it down just a little bit? We equate stewardship only with money, and that's a big mistake. So this morning, I'm very thrilled to be able to interview Deb Feigley and her daughter Katie. If you guys would come up this morning, to come up to the table. And you guys actually, I have seats for you guys, because you're my special guest today, okay? How are you, Katie? Thanks for coming today. And I'm going to hand this, you guys can pass it amongst yourselves, okay? A few weeks ago, I asked Katie and Deb if they would be willing to come and for us to talk together today. And because God makes all of us special. And that includes all of us here today. And I want to remind all of us, and all of us, that we're all special to God. And so that's important. Katie and I have got a chance to become friends. Katie's mom, Deb, and I have got a chance to become friends. And so it's fun for me to invite friends to this table today so that we can talk to you. My first question for you, I just got a couple of questions for you all. Thanks for being willing to be here today. And I promise I will stick to the script on purpose. But the first question is, in regards to our being special, I would ask you why you enjoy not only coming to this church, but what is it that you enjoy also about the special needs youth group? And that's for you, Katie, and for Deb. Katie, what do you enjoy about special needs youth group in the church? And just hold the mic real close to your mouth. Yeah, it's fine.
I get to learn about God, and I actually have people to talk to, because when I was in regular youth group, the younger kids didn't want anything to do with me.
Okay, so you didn't feel that the younger kids for a while that you fit in. Did that hurt? Did that hurt your heart?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that would hurt my heart. I don't like it when I don't fit in. And so I'm sorry that it hurt your heart, but it sounds like in the youth group now, your heart doesn't hurt so much. Is that right?
Yeah.
What has made that heart hurt better?
So I have friends and people who will talk to me.
You know, and having friends and people who talk to you mean everything. And I'm glad to be one of those people. And all of us out here. And if you haven't met Katie, let me tell you, she is just wonderful and wonderful to talk to. And by the way, what did we play where you just really kicked my butt? What were we playing? No, in the gym. I really can't remember. It's that the beanbag thingy. Yeah, corn toss, cornhole. Good Lord, Katie says, well, let's go play. And I go over to the gym and boom, 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 3 right in a row. Kick my butt right out of that place. I've got some practice to do, don't I? Yeah. It's really neat that you and your mom are both part of the special needs youth group and a part of the ministry of this church. So I have a second question, okay? The second question is in regards to this. Debbie, you've shared about the very few, if any, unfortunately, the very few, if any, ministries that exist for special needs children, young adults in our area. Do you believe this church's ministry is needed? And is it making an impact in the community, in your opinion?
Yes, I feel like this is really needed. We started this when we had one young man here with special needs that didn't fit in a youth group. And so I talked to the youth pastor at the time and decided we needed to do something about that. We started this youth group. The first week we had 5 kids, only 2 of which came to this church. At this point, we have somewhere around 15, 16 kids that come on a regular basis. and only about 6 of them belong to this church. So the majority of these people come from outside the church because there is nothing else for them here. You find as these kids leave school and enter the adult world, that their social lives just totally shrink down to nothing. They're not like the other kids. They don't have friends to go running around with. They don't have licenses. Their life is basically home. So we are giving them a social opportunity as well for something that they don't ordinarily get.
And also, I want to share that we have some champions in our youth program in Special Olympics as well.
Yeah, we have kids in this youth group that do skiing. Amy's one of them that skis. We have basketball players. We have corn toss players.
Yes, I know. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We played against 3 of them one night. He got beat really bad.
Yeah, thank you. Let's share that again, please. Let's just lift that up right now. Thank you.
We have people that play softball. We have people that swim. We have all kinds of different sports that our kids are involved in.
Can I ask a question too? Because you mentioned this, Katie, and I think it would be really helpful. We have a lot of children here today. What is something you think that I or we should say to children so that other people's hearts won't get hurt? What should we tell those children?
Maybe they're not acting the way they do on purpose. Maybe they can't help it because of a disability or something.
Okay, so that if they meet someone that is behaving differently than they are, it may very well be because, as you said so well, they can't help it, or they may have a special needs. That is wonderfully put. And you both are special to me. It's good to call you friends. And you're special to this church. And on behalf of the church, I extend our love and our care, and I thank you for being here today. Can we give them a hand, please? You see, this is what's amazing for me. When we talk about celebrating stewardship, we need to get our heads around what it means. So, as we come to time of celebrating our gifts this morning, we want to be mindful of the fact that your gifts make it possible for us to be inclusive. You'll hear in the sermon today, we'll talk about best friends, all those kind of things. And boys and girls, I hope you heard what Katie had to say today, that when you meet another boy or girl, or maybe someone else in your school that is unable to behave in the way that the teacher asked or that you would like, and it feels hurtful to their hearts, you can help take away that heart hurt by making a difference. As we prepare for you to bring your gifts forward, your prayers, presence, gifts, and service, you've shared your prayers and your presence already this morning. Those that signed up for the Bible study, the books are in that I forgot to order, so they're here. And they're in my office on my sofa. So if you're a part of the Bonhoeffer study or want to be, the books are hanging out on my sofa. Go in, get your gum today, your circus peanuts, and pick up A Life Together of Bonhoeffer. At this time, let's celebrate, as we normally do, what God is doing in our lives by utilizing the buckets at your table. We invite you to bring those and to put the contents in the larger buckets as we now share in this time of giving.
Good morning. As we continue in our worship series, This is the Greatest Show, we move to the unconditional love and acceptance of God. The story of Mephibosheth is one of the most powerful stories of forgiveness and unadulterated compassion in the Old Testament. King David returns victorious over the army of Saul and seeks to find a surviving family member to whom he may show God's kindness. Worldwide Communion, which we celebrate today, is the day when the whole Christian world sits at the table together to share in the Holy Sacrament. 2 Samuel 9, verses 1 through 7. David asked, "Is there anyone from Saul's family still alive that I could show faithful love for Jonathan's sake?" There was a servant from Saul's household named Ziba, and he was summoned before David. "Are you Ziba?" the king asked him. "At your service," he answered. The king asked, "Is there anyone left from Saul's family that I could show God's kindness to?" "Yes," Ziba said to the king, "one of Jonathan's sons, whose feet are crippled." "Where is he?" the king asked. "He is at the house of Emil's son Machir at Lodabar," Ziba told the king. So King David had him brought from the house of Emil's son Machir at Lodabar. Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son and Saul's grandson, came to David, and he fell to the ground, bowing low out of respect. "Mephibosheth?" David said. "Yes," he replied, "I am at your service." "Don't be afraid," David told him, "because I will certainly show you faithful love for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the fields of your grandfather Saul, and you will eat at my table always." May we invite all who hear to come to the king's table today.
Thank you so much this morning. Appreciate that. We're still in this series called The Greatest Show. Last week, the claim, the foundation of the whole series is that the greatest show is the incarnation of Jesus Christ. God becoming flesh to walk among us, to be with us, and suffering with us as well as celebrating with us. That's the foundation of this whole experience, based in a movie called The Greatest Showman, of which you're going to hear a really cool song later this morning. But today we take the series from the greatest show, and now we go into This Is Me. Now I want you to think about that phrase, "This is me," for just a moment. Because it's a phrase we use at certain times. It's a phrase we use when we call a really good friend, and they answer the phone, maybe they're groggy, maybe they're not paying attention, and you say hello, and they say, "Who is this?" "Well, this is me." If they recognize your voice, you'll have a conversation, not they'll hang up on you, right? And so you find out just how well they may or may not know you. Or sometimes someone might accuse you of something, or maybe even in a family, you're in a moment where you're having these discussions and something's happened, and you have someone looking at you as if you have changed. What do we respond to that? We say, "Dad, Mom, it's me. I would never do such a thing." So that phrase becomes a phrase of important identity when we're trying to communicate who we are. Well, let's go a little deeper and discover that some more today. Let's first talk about BFFs. That's a coined phrase that hasn't been around forever. Best friends forever. And we use that quite a bit these days. Some people have a whole lot of BFFs. I've never quite understood that. If you're a best friend forever, how do you have 150,000 best friends forever? And are the BFFs all the people that follow you on Facebook, or just a select few? Or who are those BFFs? Well, I think we discover what that is. A BFF, a best friend, is someone that knows us in specific ways. One of the things I enjoy about preaching and preparing for Sunday mornings is that it takes me back in my own memories. And I realized as I was putting together this part with a best friend, I remembered who mine were. My very first one was Mary Swanson. She lived next door. We had a wonderful relationship from age 2 to age 4. And my parents tell us that we took great naps together. Except I always made fun of Mary because she slept with her butt up in the air, like a lot of little kids do. And it continues to be a story told in our household. But then when we moved to Indianapolis area, north of Indy, my best friend then, his name was Jimmy Claddy. I haven't seen either one of these people in years. I'm not even sure. I've not searched for them on Facebook. Because Jimmy Claddy was an elementary age friend, and when our families got together, Jimmy and I went over to this dock on some river and went fish. But I remember I caught my very first fish with Jimmy. And there is this caption in time of two little bitty kids holding a really little bitty fish. But we think we caught a whale. And we're holding it up proudly. And it's frozen in time because we were good friends. And then as we grow up and go into middle school and high school, sometimes we're fortunate to have good friends, best friends, other times not. You kids that are in the service today, I'm so glad that you're here with us today, because I want to remind all of us that sometimes we may not have a friend that we think is our best and good friend, and maybe we can't always see them, but that doesn't mean that we're not loved, because God is our best friend. So where does this take us to? It takes us to this right here. Stewardship is born out of our relationship with God. Stewardship is born out of our relationship with God. God intended for us to be God's best friend. God intended, when God created humanity, for us to have a relationship together. We were not created like a petting zoo. Unfortunately, many people see it that way. They see God as this great zookeeper up here and created humanity as pets. I'm going to populate the earth with all these animals, including humans, and they're kind of my pets. And I want to train them to do these specific things. But we miss it, don't we? Because that's not who God is. And so when it comes to stewardship, which is so much more than money, it's about our sharing ourselves because of one thing, our relationship with God. So people that have not reached a point in one's life where they feel they have a relationship with God, that they either acknowledge or where they've accepted that wonderful love experience because of that moment that stifles the stewardship. Stifles our prayer. It stifles us wanting to get up and go be a part of our faith community on any morning. It stifles us from looking at our bills and wanting to give God anything. It stifles us for wanting to offer ourselves, our time, our kindness, our energy. It stifles us because we start to question the relationship. Does God really care? The answer? Yes. So let me tell you about a love story this morning. It's a love story that you just heard a part of the passage this morning, read so well. And it's a love story that actually goes back to 1 Samuel chapter 9, which we're not reading on purpose because it's just to give you the context of the experience. And context is incredibly important when we deal with Scripture. So the context is simply this. We have one kid whose name is John, another kid whose name is Dave, and John comes from the palace and from wealth. His dad happens to be king, so think of that as a big CEO, okay? So John's dad is king, and his friend Dave is a shepherd kid, the literal runt of the litter, and grew up hard and spends their life as nomads, and they follow the sheep. Their paths cross, ironically, of all places, with the king. How? Because David was a musician. And he could play this instrument called a lyre, which is like a mini harp. And so he was called and summoned by the counselors of the king because the king had fits at night. Was it epilepsy? We don't know. What was it? Was it just sleeplessness, insomnia? We don't know. Was it demonic? We don't know. But we do know that the king couldn't sleep. And when he'd have these fits, he'd get very angry. He would throw things like spears and other stuff at his servants. So they call Dave, and Dave comes in and he plays the lyre, and King is able to sleep. And so now Dave and John meet each other, and in the Bible they're referred to as Jonathan and David. And they become BFFs. They become such close friends. They not only spend all of their time together, despite the fact of the disparity between their ages, that one grew up really rich and one grew up really poor. And there's a point in 1 Samuel chapter 9, about verse 20, or chapter 20, where they say this incredible thing to each other. Jonathan says, you know what, I know my dad hates you. And I don't know why. We know why, because he's jealous of David, who became a great warrior, and everyone was singing his praises instead of the king. He says, I'm sorry my dad doesn't like you. Pause. Have you ever been in a situation where we have friends whose friends don't like us? Have you ever been in a situation where we have friends whose friends' family don't invite us over? Have we been in situations in our own family where at family gatherings we know which family members to keep apart? You see, that's what real life is, my friends. It's messy. And so this story resonates with more of us than we realize. For you boys and girls, when you're at school and you go out on the playground or when you're in the cafeteria, I know that there are some children that you stay away from because they may be labeled a bully or they're not very nice, and I get that. And that's a good thing to do, to stay out of that. But it doesn't change the way it makes our heart feel. As Katie said so well, it makes our heart hurt. So Jonathan's heart hurt for his friend David. So before they separated their ways because Saul was going to kill David, here's what Jonathan says, and this sets the whole piece here this morning. He says, no matter what happens to me and each other in our lives, will you promise me, David, promise me this, that you will watch over any surviving family member that I have. I want a covenant with you. And then they took their hands and they placed them on this muscle. Boys and girls, this is the strongest muscle in the leg. It's called the thigh. We shake hands today when we make a commitment, but in the Bible, they did something that seems a little funky to us. And they would take their hand and put it on the other person's thigh, and they put it on their thigh because it's a strong muscle, and they say, we promise. Promises are meant not to be broken. And so he made that promise. Now let's shoot forward in this love story today. And we find David, who is now king. Saul and Jonathan's brother, had died in battle on their own swords at the hands of others and had been humiliated and beaten. And so David returns in great triumph. But he remembered that day when they made a promise, when they made a commitment, when they made a covenant, when he says, I'm going to be your BFF, your best friend forever. And when he arrives, the very first thing he does is this. He calls together the servant Ziba, and he says, is there anybody here, anybody at all, who is a family member of Saul that I might show, you ready for this? That I might show God's kindness. There was one. Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth was a crippled young boy. He had been dropped when he was a baby. His feet didn't work well. And those with special needs, dare we say, were not accepted in society. They were ostracized. They're not included. So you can imagine how shaky Mephibosheth was when he arrives in front of the king. And he falls down on the ground, not because he couldn't walk, but because he was scared and he was being reverent to a king. And David says, you're Jonathan's boy, aren't you? He says, yeah, I am. He says, stand up. He says, I knew your dad really well. You ever had that moment? Somebody comes up, you don't know him at all, but they say, I know someone that knows you. And you either get really excited or really afraid for what they've heard, right? He says, I know your father. Your father was my best friend forever. And I made a promise to your dad. Stand up, young man. Oh, your father would be so proud of you. And I'm the king. I want you to come live with me. And instead of eating scraps like you've been begging for, from now on you will inherit the lands of your father, King Saul. You are welcome to my table. And you will sit with the king forever. You and your children's children forever. Because I keep my promise, says King David. Let's talk about round tables. We often refer to round tables when we talk about knights of the round table. But if you remember that story of King Arthur, and if you kids have read any of those stories or heard them told about King Arthur, he created a literal round table so that none of the knights would feel more important than anyone else. That's what God does. God invites us to a round table, not a rectangular or a square table. Because at a rectangular or square table, we're not sure where to sit. We go to someone's home. We've been invited for dinner. We walk into the dining room or into the kitchen, wherever the table is, and we say, and the first question we usually ask is, where would you like me to sit? A gracious host will say, you can sit anywhere. It doesn't matter. Someone who's not really excited about us being there say, well, you sit over there, I'm over here, don't get in my chair. And we don't usually go back to those people's homes, do we? Because we don't feel invited. The point of the round table is that there is no head of the table. We are all equals. We have round tables in this room that's intentional so that we can sit around the table. And when people walk in, they don't have to go, well, who's the table leader here? Who's the table leader? It doesn't matter. And this whole room, and today the entire globe, this planet, is one giant round table. And all are invited to the table. Let's talk about that invitation. You probably, like me, receive items in the mail that say, to the current resident. Makes me feel so important. They know me well, don't they? To the current resident who lives here. And if you take a moment to open some of that junk mail, then you find out they really don't know it. But we get really excited when we get something in the mail that's handwritten. And it has our name on it. I want us to understand what God's invitation is today. God's invitation is not to the current resident. God's invitation is to each one of you by name, for God knows you and God created you. And God takes time, just like a fancy wedding experience, to emboss those names and to get that address right and to use the fancy stamps on there and to put stuff on the back that lets you know this is an important piece of mail, much even more important than Publishers Clearinghouse. And you get this in the mail. And it has your name on it. And you open it up and it says, you are invited to the banquet of God. Will you come and sit at my table? We've combined today the sacrament of communion with the parable of the great banquet on purpose, for we want each of us to understand how integral it is to understand we're all invited. So who is invited? All freaks welcome. Circus freaks, society's freaks, God's freaks. We use the term freak today because in the Bible they say sinner. Meaning that any one of us is invited because we are all imperfect. None of us fit in every single circle. No one can say we fit in every economic circle. We don't fit in every gender circle. We don't fit places in our lives. We're imperfect. We make mistakes. We screw up. We hurt people's feelings. And yet we're invited to the table because God doesn't see us as freaks, but as children. God sees us as children. So what's that called? Unconditional love. Unconditional love is something we really need to understand. So to understand unconditional love, let's talk about conditional love. Conditional love is this. I'll love you if. For you boys and girls who go out on the playground and someone says, I'll be your friend if you give me the ball and let me go first. They're saying, you can be my friend if. Don't do it. Hang on that ball. Or they'll come sit at your table at lunch. Hey, I'll be your friend if you'll give me your lunch. Because my mom gave me nothing but broccoli, but you got PB&J. I'll be your friend if you give me that. Don't you give up that lunch. That's called conditional love. Adults, you know, man, I'm really looking at a raise for you if there's a couple things I need some help with at home. I'll be your friend if. I'll be in a relationship with you if. These are called conditions. It's like the fine print in a contract. It's like all the words that go underneath all the medications we can take, and they're going to cause all these side effects. But they say it with such a pleasant voice and a smiling face that we miss it. We don't want to miss that. We want to understand it's unconditional. What's that? Unconditional love says, I love you, period. I don't care where you sit. I don't care what you have for lunch. I don't care where you are in the line. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what your color is. I don't care the shape of your body. I don't even care about your theology. What I care about is I care about you because I love you unconditionally. I love you, period. And I am so thankful to God. I was raised in a home, and many have not been. I was raised in a home where my parents loved me, period. And there are plenty of times they could have thrown a condition in my face when I blow it. The definition of unconditional love is found in 1 John 4:10, where it says, this is love. Not that we love God, but that God loved us first. Man, I love that. Not that we love God, but that God loved us first. God did not wait for us to respond. God did not wait for anything. God didn't wait until we got our theology together, our spirituality together, and we got our church attendance together. God didn't wait for anything. God says, I love you, period. I created you, and I'm going to throw my love upon you, period. It's unbelievable. It is the greatest act of kindness and depth of love that we could ever experience. So how do we qualify? What are the qualifications to sit at the table? Well, they're quite simple. Show up and open up. The qualifications for sitting at the table of God is to show up and open up. And that's what our table's about this morning. You showed up, and we invite you to open up to all that God has to offer you today, to God's table. As I invite the band to come forward, I remind you of this is me. And here's what we're inviting you to today. In the back, would you turn the lights up, please, in the house, or the room, whatever we call this? There are the light switches back there. These lights are really nice, but after the service, I can't see for 3 hours. Thank you. I'm just kidding. I want us to see each other. Today's Worldwide Community, so here's what you're invited to today. Instead of coming forward and only I or the other communion stewards serving you, you're going to share in communion at your table. For those of you that are not at a table because we get crammed in here, you'll be invited to go to any table you want and be an incredible party crasher. Why? You can't crash a party when you're invited. At your table you will find juice, you will find bread, you will find some grapes, and we want you to partake of that in just a moment. My role will be to bless the elements during the song. Once the elements are blessed and the song is over, I will invite you to take communion together. Together. You can take the cup and pass it around your table. You can leave it in the center. You can take off the bread and dip it in. And so someone at each table, when you see me lift up the bread and bless it, someone at that table needs to take that bread and break it in half. I don't care who it is. You are worthy. Why? God made you so. The song that they're about to sing is powerful words. And they're words that I translate for myself into a prayer of confession and hope today. So as I read just the first stanza of the song that you're about to hear, about a song titled, This Is Me. Hear these words and know that God knows you and is your BFF. It says this: I am not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say. Ever feel you're not included and someone tells you to hide away? Because we don't want your broken parts. On the altar this morning, there is a goblet that is broken that I take with me from church to church to remind me of my own brokenness, and that we all share one thing in common always: our brokenness. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars, it says. God says, don't be ashamed. Be proud, for you're still my child. Run away, they say. No one will love you as you are. That's a lie. It's a lie of the culture. It's a lie of society. And it's a lie in dysfunctional families. How dare anyone tell you, boys and girls, men and women, how dare anyone tell you that you will not be loved as you are? That is abhorrent. And I won't tolerate it. And God won't tolerate it. But I won't let them break me down. I won't let them break me down to dust. I know there's a place for us. For we are glorious. When the sharpest words want to cut us down, we're going to send a flood, going to drown them out. For we are brave. We are bruised. And I add, we are forgiven. I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out. Here I come. Enjoy the powerful song. May it resonate with your own understanding of who you are before God, as I have the privilege to bless these elements and invite you to break the bread at your own tables as well. Please. begun, the elements have been blessed and broken. Please share the communion at God's table today, either serving one another or serving by dipping it yourselves, enjoying the grapes, the cheese, everything on your table. Let's enjoy this banquet.
Just hit kill audio. I'm like, that's not the song I'm singing. Guys, I just have to say something. This is not scripted, this was not planned, and Pastor Craig's probably going to punch me in the throat today after that. This man has done something amazing for our church. Come on, do that again. He has brought a sense of community to us that I haven't felt in a long time. It feels like a big family having a meal around a table. Now, when he told me we were going to do this, I was like, man, I'm just not sure that's going to work. He says it's my OCD or whatever kicking in because I need everything in order and everything perfect, and it probably is. But I just want to say how thankful I am for Pastor Craig, that he's here and that it's a new beginning for us and new things happening. I just felt like I needed to say that. Let's all sing that song. God is so good. You don't even need the words. God is so good. God is so good. He's so good to me. One more time. God is so good. God is so good. God is so good. He's so good to me.
Community is something that has to happen where God's involved. And what Tim's describing is the reality of what happens when people take risks to get to know each other. It's scary. It's scary to take those risks. But if this is not a safe place where we can unveil the challenges and scars and needs of our lives, where can we? I don't know of any other place. So as we sing, we got one more song in with Brent. Just to do it in the chorus again. I just invite you to prepare your hearts for this week. And if you're experiencing a moment with God, I just invite you not to keep it to yourself. You can share it with somebody else. Because there's a lot of people that need it. Let's sing this closing together, please.
We'll do the bridge. Oh, there's never been anyone like you. Never been anyone like you. You are worthy. You are worthy. Sing that with me. Never been anyone. There's never been anyone like you. Never been anyone like you. You are worthy. You are worthy. One more time. Oh, there's never been anyone like you. Never been That'll be on iTunes in a few months.